Welcome in. Um, if you've ever felt like the world is just, way too vast to fully understand, or if you're intensely curious about how human beings manage to adapt to wildly extreme environments, you are in the perfect place.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have this massive stack of cultural, historical, and musical research notes sitting right here on the table
It's
today.
a huge stack.
It really is. So, the goal for this deep dive is to take you on a sensory journey across 5 incredibly diverse regions of Indonesia. We're looking at the Papua Highlands, Lombok, Borneo, Sulawesi, and the Maluku Islands.
Right.
We're going to extract the most fascinating traditions, the local slang, and the historical turning points that really define these places. Okay, let's unpack this.
It is quite a journey. When people hear Indonesia, their minds usually default right to the tourist-heavy beaches of Bali,
Or
or
the massive traffic in Jakarta.
exactly the immense urban sprawl there. But what's fascinating here is how stepping away from those centers reveals a completely different reality. The core theme across all these sources is geography. Extreme geography doesn't just, influence these cultures. It absolutely dictates their survival, their art, their community structures.
Right, it's foundational.
It is. Each of these 5 regions has forged a distinct identity, and every single one is navigating this really delicate tension between ancient traditions and modern development.
So let's just start with the most extreme geography in the stack, which is the Papua Highlands,
Oh, yeah.
specifically the central highlands of Western New Guinea. The notes focus on a province called Papua Pegunungan, which was newly established in 2022.
Right. It's separated from the broader Papua province.
Right, and the capital city there is Wamena. Just picturing this place is wild. You've got these high-altitude grasslands, dense montane forests, and steep mountains covered in mist.
And that elevation is really the defining factor of their history. For centuries, that rugged, almost impenetrable terrain kept the indigenous clan-based groups completely isolated.
Isolated from the coastal trade networks, right?
Yeah, exactly. The ones shaping the rest of the archipelago.
Yeah.
So you have groups like the Dani, the Lani, the Yali, and the Kubula. Because of that extreme isolation, they develop incredibly strong, distinct oral traditions and a very warrior-oriented societal structure.
And the visual elements of these cultures are just striking. The traditional attire includes the kotika.
The male gourd coverings.
Yeah, alongside intricate body painting and these massive headdresses made from the feathers of the bird of paradise.
That's beautiful.
But because Wamena is now a developing city, the sources highlight this jarring kind of beautiful contrast. You'll see modern youth wearing typical denim and casual wear right alongside elders in full traditional attire.
Right in the streets.
Yeah, the notes describe it as seeing feathers and denim in the exact same valley. So how does that blend of ancient and modern play out in their daily survival?
Well, it centers heavily around agriculture and communal warmth. In that high-altitude chill, the sweet potato is the absolute staple of their diet.
They supplement it with leafy greens, right?
Yes, but the absolute pinnacle of their social and dietary structure is pork. Pigs are the ultimate symbol of wealth, status, diplomacy in these highland cultures.
Wow.
And the way they prepare this food is basically an architectural feat of thermodynamics called the barapin.
The earth oven.
Exactly, a communal earth oven. They heat stones in a fire, then layer those blistering stones in a pit with the sweet potatoes, the greens, and the ceremonial pork.
And they cover it all with earth.
Right, to let it roast. It's just a brilliant way to cook massive amounts of food while retaining heat in a freezing mountain environment.
And that concept of retaining heat even influences their architecture, too. The notes mention their traditional honai houses.
The round ones.
Yeah, these small, thickly thatched huts designed specifically to insulate against the mountain cold.
Precisely. The environment demands physical closeness, which translates directly into strong social cohesion.
Which you really see at the Balian Valley Festival.
Oh, absolutely. It's a massive annual gathering that brings all the different clans together. They perform mock tribal warfare, massive pig feasts, traditional dances.
And the music there, it's not delicate melodies, it's a heavy, earth-shaking rhythm.
Yeah, driven by the tifa drum.
That single-headed wooden drum. The musical structure relies on unified group chanting, pentatonic scales, and this intense call-and-response phrasing that just echoes through the mountain passes.
It's powerful, and you can almost hear the language blending with those drums.
Yeah.
The locals speak indigenous languages like Dani or Lani, but they also use Papuan Malay slang. You might hear someone call a friend pace or use the phrase Saputana, which translates to my land.
And that phrase feels incredibly heavy given the geopolitical realities of the region.
It is a profoundly heavy phrase.
Now, I want to pause here and make something abundantly clear to you listening. When we discuss the history and the politics of this region, we are strictly looking at what the historical sources state. We aren't taking any political sides here whatsoever. We're just impartially reporting the documented facts from the research.
Right, it's important to be objective. To understand the highlands today, you have to look at that historical context.
Yeah.
Following a long period of pre-colonial isolation, the region saw Dutch exploration in the early 20th century. Later, the area was formally incorporated into Indonesia, following the 1969 Act of Free Choice.
Which the sources note remains a highly controversial moment in history.
Very controversial.
Yeah.
It has led to ongoing, well-documented tensions between Papuan independence movements and the Indonesian state. It is a complex, deeply entrenched political reality that sits right alongside the ancient traditions we were just discussing.
Right, it's all happening in the same space. Well, that transition from isolation to being thrust into a broader political sphere really brings us to a region that has dealt with outside influence for centuries.
Lombok.
Let's move west to Lombok. It's an island in the West Nusa Tenggara province, sitting directly next door to Bali. But the contrast between the two is night and day.
Geographically close, but culturally worlds apart. While Bali is this international, predominantly Hindu tourist hub, Lombok is deeply rooted in the indigenous Sasak culture, which is predominantly Muslim.
And they prioritize totally different values.
Right. The Sasak people have built their society on a foundation of village traditions, prioritizing modesty, social harmony, and a dot.
A dot being customary law.
Correct. Lombok has always been at a crossroads. It was influenced by the Hindu-Buddhist Majapahit Empire, later converted to Islam by traders in the 16th century, and even occupied by Balinese rulers before the Dutch arrived.
And with all those layers of influence, the indigenous traditions that actually survived are mind-bending. The one that jumps out immediately from the notes is the Bao Nile Festival.
Oh, the sea worms.
Yes. Massive crowds gather on the beaches at a very specific time of year to catch sea worms emerging from the ocean. But they don't just see this as a harvest. They actually believe these sea worms are the literal reincarnation of a legendary figure named Princess Mandalika.
It's a perfect example of how myth serves ecological and social functions.
How so?
Well, the emergence of those Nile worms happens perfectly in sync with the lunar cycle, marking a specific seasonal shift. By wrapping this biological event in the legend of Princess Mandalika.
The princess who sacrificed herself to the sea to prevent a war among her suitors.
Exactly. By doing that, the community ensures that the harvest is treated with reverence and collective participation rather than greed.
That's fascinating.
And they balance that mystical reverence with incredibly intense physical traditions, like Parisian.
The stick fighting.
Yeah, a highly ritualized traditional stick fighting ceremony. It tests the bravery of the men while also serving as a ritual to bring rain.
And that intensity definitely bleeds into the local flavor profile. The food in Lombok does not hold back.
Not at all.
You have dishes like ayam taliwang, which is this heavily spiced grilled chicken, and plesing kangkung, a water spinach dish loaded with an aggressive chili heat.
And that aggressive, bold profile is mirrored in their music. The traditional soundtrack of Lombok is the gendang belek, a large drum ensemble.
The booming drums.
Yes, but unlike the deep, echoing chants of the Papua Highlands, Sasak vocal music utilizes a highly nasal, incredibly strong vocal projection.
Because they have to be heard over the drums.
Exactly. The singers have to cut through the massive sound of the drums, flutes, and cymbals. It's a resilient, piercing sound.
Resilience really seems to be the defining word for Lombok. Between weathering centuries of colonization and the devastating 2018 earthquakes that leveled parts of the island, their reliance on faith and community is what keeps them standing.
It's a strong foundation.
From the ocean winds of Lombok, let's pivot to a totally different survival mechanism. Let's look at the research on Kalimantan, the Indonesian portion of the massive island of Borneo.
Okay, shifting gears.
We are trading the ocean for an endless sea of rainforest canopies and river networks.
Borneo is fundamentally a river civilization. The dense, ancient ironwood forests made overland travel nearly impossible historically.
So they use the water.
Exactly. The massive, sweeping river systems became the highways, the grocery stores, and the spiritual centers. The indigenous Dayak peoples, along with coastal Malay and Banjar communities, have a profound symbiotic connection to the water.
The Dayak being an umbrella term for many different tribes, right?
Yes. And they're famous for their longhouse architecture. You have entire villages living together under one single massive roof, elevated on stilts above the riverbanks.
Living under one roof like that requires immense social harmony. And you can actually hear that harmony in the traditional instrument of the region, the sape.
The plucked lute?
Yeah. The notes describe its sound as incredibly hypnotic. The melodies flow on pentatonic scales, creating this slow, trance-like rhythm.
The music is a direct sonic reflection of the environment. Unlike the aggressive drums of Lombok or the heavy percussion of Papua, the sebe produces an atmospheric, spacious sound.
It's very calming.
The vocal styling relies on open-throated chanting and elongated phrasing. It literally mimics the slow, continuous, meandering flow of the jungle rivers. It's music designed to put you into a state of communion with the forest.
And what a forest it is. The biodiversity here is staggering, though incredibly fragile.
Definitely fragile.
You have critically endangered orangutans, proboscis monkeys, the massive alien-looking rafflesia flower, and the sacred hornbill bird.
The hornbill is deeply culturally significant. Its imagery dominates Dayak tattoo symbolism and traditional beaded clothing.
Here's where it gets really interesting. All of this ancient river-based animism is currently the site of an unprecedented modern clash.
The tension here is immense. For centuries, you've had deep forest spirituality, river blessing ceremonies, and harvest festivals like Gawai Dayak.
Yeah.
But today, those traditions are colliding head-on with industrial realities.
Like the massive logging operations.
Logging, and the rapid sweeping expansion of palm oil plantations. But the most significant shift is happening right now in East Kalimantan. Indonesia is currently constructing Nusantara.
A brand new, hyper-modern capital city right in the middle of the jungle.
Yes. Building a sprawling capital city in an ancient rainforest is the ultimate collision of worlds. You have the ancient concept of the river of life.
The Sungai Kehidupan.
Right, forced to coexist with cranes, concrete, and millions of new residents. The psychological and ecological toll of that transition is something anthropologists will be studying for decades.
I bet.
How does a culture that believes spirits inhabit the trees adapt when those trees are cleared for government buildings? It forces a rapid, painful adaptation of identity.
Speaking of complex geography shaping identity, let's cross the water to an island that our sources describe with an amazing visual. We're looking at Sulawesi, and the island is literally shaped like a wild starfish doing parkour.
It's an incredibly apt description. Sulawesi is geographically fractured by deep gulfs and high mountain ranges.
Making travel difficult again.
Brutally difficult.
Yeah.
Because it's so broken up, overland travel was historically punishing, which meant that the communities in the different arms of the starfish evolved in total isolation from one another.
Right.
You have the Minahasan culture up at the northern tip in Manado, and the Bugis and Makassarese people down in the southern port cities.
Let's focus on South Sulawesi for a second, because the Toraja culture inland has a perspective on life and death that completely redefines the concept of a funeral.
The Rambu Solo rituals.
Yes. When someone passes away, their Rambu Solo rituals are not somber, quiet affairs. They are massive, vibrant, ancestral festivals that can last for days and require immense architectural preparation.
Because the Toraja view death not as a sudden end, but as a gradual transition to the spirit world. And that requires a massive display of respect.
They gather around the Tangkonan houses, right?
Yes, these stunning traditional houses with massive sweeping roofs that look like ships floating in the mountains. They carve tautau, which are highly detailed wooden effigies of the deceased placed on balconies carved into the cliff faces.
Literally watching over the living.
Exactly. They even practice manen, a ritual where families exhume, clean, and redress the bodies of their ancestors.
That level of devotion to the ancestors is staggering. It's an incredible spiritual investment in the past.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that inland reverence for the ancestors perfectly mirrors the coastal culture of South Sulawesi.
The Bugis and Makassarese people.
Right, they are historic master boat builders and navigators. Their traditional pinisi schooners dominated the archipelago's trade routes.
Oh, so the sweeping boat-shaped roofs of the Toraja Tangkonan houses inland
Are a direct nod to those maritime origins.
Wow.
The overarching philosophy of Sulawesi is a duality. Respect the ancestors in the mountains and respect the sea on the coast.
That maritime influence brings a really vibrant energy to the modern culture there too, especially the food. Down in Makassar, the culinary scene is famous for kodo Makassar, a rich, deeply spiced beef soup with a heavy roasted peanut base.
Sounds amazing.
And up north, the pop culture is completely distinct. You have the kolintang, a traditional wooden xylophone, constantly blending with modern pop beats.
And the linguistics are incredibly inclusive, too. In North Sulawesi, the local Manado Malay slang uses words like torang, meaning we or us, and Ghana for you,
It reflects a very warm, communal mindset.
a mindset that is essential when your geography forces you to rely entirely on your neighbors.
And that concept of relying on your neighbors is the perfect bridge to our fifth and final region, the Maluku Islands.
Ah, yes.
Historically, the world knew this region as the Spice Islands.
And the historical weight of Maluku cannot be overstated. Located in eastern Indonesia, this specific cluster of islands literally redrew the global map.
Because of the spices.
For centuries, they were the planet's only source of cloves and nutmeg. Because of that immense botanical wealth, they became ground zero for global imperialism.
The history detailed in the notes is heavy. The Portuguese arrived in the early 16th century, followed by the ruthless monopoly of the Dutch East India Company. Right. The sources document atrocities like the 1621 Banda massacre by the Dutch, which decimated the local population to control the nutmeg trade. And even in modern times, from 1999 to 2002, the region suffered through severe religious conflicts between Christian and Muslim communities.
But the narrative of Maluku isn't just one of conflict. It is ultimately a masterclass in human reconciliation.
How do they manage that?
After that modern conflict, the communities leaned heavily into an ancient inter-village alliance system called Pela Gandong.
I saw that. It's a customary brotherhood pact.
Yes, it binds different villages together, often a Christian village and a Muslim village, in a vow of mutual assistance. You'll hear the phrase Salam Basudara everywhere, which translates to peace, brothers and sisters.
That's powerful.
It's a deliberate daily choice to choose harmony over division.
And the primary vehicle for that harmony seems to be music. The capital, Ambon, is recognized globally as a city of music.
The sound profile there is completely unique.
You still have the deep indigenous rhythm of the tifa drum acting as the backbone, but it's heavily layered with strong oceanic vocal harmonies and the distinct influence of Christian hymn choirs.
The vocal tradition there is incredibly emotional and grounded. It takes the communal aspect of choir culture and blends it with indigenous storytelling.
And that communal nature is entirely reflected in their diet, too.
Oh, definitely.
The staple food isn't rice, it's papeda, a thick, sticky sago porridge. It's usually served with ikan kuah kuning, a bright yellow turmeric, and lime fish soup.
And the mechanics of eating papeda require you to use 2 bamboo sticks to twirl the sticky starch onto your plate.
Right. It's inherently communal. You're all literally pulling from the same sticky pot, which is just a perfect metaphor for how these island communities stick together.
It really is.
So what does this all mean? We've just sprinted across 5 distinct corners of this archipelago.
When you zoom out and look at the totality of these sources, the mist-covered earth ovens of Papua, the resilient drum lines of Lombok,
The trance-like river lutes of Borneo facing down modern concrete.
the boat-shaped ancestral roofs of Sulawesi, and the choir harmonies healing the historical wounds of Mosuku. The common thread is adaptation.
Always adapting.
Human beings will use deeply specific food, rhythm, and unshakable community laws to anchor themselves when the world around them is constantly shifting.
They all found a way to maintain their cultural soul while navigating intense modern pressures.
This raises an important question. We've talked about how these communities adapt, but we actually held back one crucial concept from the Maluku research until now.
Oh, right.
It's an ancient environmental doctrine called Sasi.
I saw that in the notes. What exactly is Sasi?
Sasi is a customary law practiced in the Maluku Islands that dictates sustainability. It is a strict community-enforced ban on harvesting specific natural resources, whether it's fish from a certain reef or fruit from a certain grove, for a designated period.
A total ban.
Yes. When the Sasi is declared closed, no one, regardless of status, is allowed to touch the resource. It allows the ecosystem time to entirely replenish itself.
That makes so much sense.
Once nature has recovered, the Sasi is opened, and the community can harvest again, but only what they need.
So it's a deeply ingrained indigenous conservation law that actually works.
It works because it's enforced by community respect, not just distant government policy. And here's the challenge for you, listening to this right now. We live in a modern era plagued by climate anxiety, rapid resource depletion, massive overconsumption.
Yeah.
What would it actually look like if our modern global cities adopted the indigenous framework of Sasi? Could an ancient island law from the Maluku archipelago be the exact blueprint the modern world needs to survive its own future?
That is something to sit with. It's a brilliant perspective. Sometimes the most innovative solutions to our modern crises have been quietly practiced by island communities for centuries.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope you leave with a profound appreciation for these cultures and the ingenious ways they navigate the world. Keep exploring, and we'll catch you next time.